Okay, Mike, we had part 1 and part 2. Now we're at part 3, and we got some really cool, more fantastic stones and all kinds of great big huge unexplainable things.
That's right.
In this one, it's going to be cool.
Yeah, we're going to finish up this whole thing, and then we're going to kind of see some historical records and some biblical records.
Okay.
And we're going to see how all this stuff fits together. Because you won't hear this on the news, and you're not going to hear this in history, but it's the real truth.
Yeah.
And so it's a good thing to hear.
What's this first one?
Sacsayhuaman. This is in Cusco, Peru. And you can see the same thing as with all the other places. The records are gone. There's nothing left except these giant stones.
Yeah.
And you can see this stone here that's closest to us. It looks like there's cuts in it, but those aren't cuts. Those are stones stacked on top of each other.
Wow, okay.
So very interesting. Look at how big and how precise all these stones are.
Yes.
But a disaster came through that was so unbelievable and so gigantic that it destroyed everything except just left these giant stones. The next one, there you can see another view of kind of these walls or whatever you want to call this. You can see the people walking along there.
Wow, these are huge.
It's very big, very big. Yeah, that's right. It's huge. And some big stones. And here, this one, I like this one a lot. This is a big doorway. Now, you got some doors around your place. Your doors that big?
No, they're not.
Oh, they're not.
I get your point.
You're starting to get the idea. Why would you have a door that big unless you needed one?
Unless you're massive.
It's a clue,
Yeah.
and it's a possibility.
Yeah.
And the same thing, we got the massive stones. You got massive stairs there, and then you have a massive doorway.
Yeah, that's crazy. Look how tall. I mean, it's like you can assume those people are 5.5.
Yep, 5.5.
10, 12 feet tall doorway.
Yep. Yeah, about 10 or higher.
Yeah, maybe.
10 or higher. That's big. Now there's
this next one here.
Yeah, look at this.
This one's cool.
Yeah, it is. And the rocks are so massive that not only were they cut, they had to be moved, and then they were cut again in order to fit all the other pieces in it.
Yeah.
See how massive and unbelievable and beautifully done this
They're just stepped in there and angled and just so tight and precise.
It's beautifully,
Yeah,
spectacularly well done.
Yeah, it sure is. Let me find this next one here.
Yeah, this is absolutely spectacular, this stuff. And there are no records whatsoever of anybody who lived there. It's all gone. Look at that. This is the famous 12-angle stone. And you can see all the angles cut in it for all the other stones to fit.
Yeah, wow.
So they put these big stones in here, and then they cut all these other little...
To fit that, yeah.
So it'll fit perfectly and make it really strong. See, they didn't make walls like we do today with white block, where everything is uniform and stacked perfectly in between each other.
Yeah.
All different sizes and different shapes, all fitting in to make it one massive, strong wall.
It's so precise.
Yeah. No mortar is used. It's just rocks on top of rock that is so precisely fit. Look at that.
That's just crazy.
This looks like it was wet almost.
Yeah.
And molten, and they just took your finger along there and made a nice smooth.
Yeah.
It's so perfectly in there. In fact, there are a lot of evidence in this place of that it looks like the rock may have been heated up and flowed together and then cooled down again. And I'm not saying that's exactly what happened, but there's evidence that shows that may have been what happened.
Huh.
They may have had a way of heating it up so that it would melt into each other and then cool it down so it made like a perfect exact fit.
Okay.
Fascinating, huh?
That is interesting.
Really high technology, whatever it is.
Yeah, no kidding.
And whatever was used, unbelievably high technology that has been
at this point,
lost.
we can just speculate on a lot of it.
Yeah.
How it was done. Are we just guessing?
We're basically guessing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Uh-huh.
What's this next one?
Ollantaytambo, it's called. This is also in Peru. Look at the massive size of this place.
Wow.
Ollantaytambo. It's huge. Same MO as all the other places. No records, no anything left. All you have is these giant stoneways that were cut out. And so they're still there because whatever disaster came by and that totally annihilated the entire place and destroyed everything except for these giant stones.
This is all that's left.
And even those are all moved around different places than they were originally. Well, some of them. This is by the way, this place is about 40 miles north of the last place we just looked at. So some of these are kind of in close proximity.
Okay.
But here you see,
This one here.
yeah, this one is interesting because this is the one, this is where they were cutting the rock from. You see, this is the hillside, and they actually cut the rock. You can see how they cut the stones out.
Yeah. So it's a quarry.
That's a quarry,
Yeah.
exactly. They've cut the stone out from there. Isn't that fascinating?
It is. Wow.
How is that done? We don't know.
Yeah.
What did they use? We don't know. We don't know anything about it. All you can see is that they, in fact, did cut it out from right there. That's a fact. But we don't know how it was done.
Wow.
Now, this next one is known as the Monument of the Six Monoliths. And what's really interesting about this is that these were not cut from this hillside you see in the background there.
Right.
These were cut from 12 miles away, down the valley, because we're about 9,000 feet up here, down the valley and across the river. They were cut out over there. They were brought across the river, up the hillside, 12 miles up to this place, and placed right there.
Wow.
So how is that done? Well, nobody knows how that's done. It's impossible.
Yeah.
In the way I'm thinking today, it's impossible. And some of those stones are over 100 tons. 200,000 pounds is what some of those stones weigh that we just saw, the six monoliths. Now, we got a picture of something that weighs 200,000 pounds, so you can get an idea. That is what weighs 200,000 pounds.
Wow.
Which they took across.
Stand next to one of those, you get
the idea
feel,
about about how big we're talking
It's
now.
kind of scary how big it is.
And they carried this, cut it out of the hillside, across the river, and up the hill 12 miles to where they were put on the top of Ollantaytambo.
Wow.
Wow is right. That is massive on a scale that's unbelievable.
Yeah, you can.
And that's why I like to show these kind of pictures.
Yeah.
Because it brings home, because everybody's seen one of these.
Gives you a real world right now, example to compare it to.
Yep, that's the weight of those rocks.
Yeah.
Now we're going to go to Egypt because there's some. This is known as the Aswan obelisk, and this is a massive obelisk, and this was cut right from the quarry where you see it sitting, and they cut down both sides. And what happened here is this developed a huge crack in it, so it was no longer usable. So they left it. But they cut it down both sides and on top and everything, and the bottom is still connected.
Uh-huh.
And then somehow, when they're all done, they cut the bottom off.
And then pull
and
it
then,
out.
And then they lift it out of there, and then go put it where they're going to use it. Now the next picture shows some people walking on it, and you can kind of see how big this thing is. Yeah.
That thing is massive.
Yeah, it's 2,200,000 pounds. So it's so big, there wouldn't be any point in making it because it's just impossible to do.
Yeah.
Well, obviously it wasn't impossible for them to do. It's impossible for us to do maybe, but not impossible for them to do.
Couldn't even imagine trying to just stand that thing up somehow, let alone cut the bottom off.
Yep.
As smooth as that. You know what I mean?
Just like the top. How do you do that?
It's just amazing.
Nobody knows how they did it.
Yeah, it's mind-boggling.
They didn't do it with chisels. It was done with something else.
Yeah.
But we don't have any of that.
Wow.
This was done by some kind of technology that we no longer have anywhere. So we don't know what it was. Simple as that. It's just gone.
Right.
The next one is called Baalbek. Now, this is in Syria. This is a block of stone that was cut out and moved here. And you can see it's partially stuck in the ground because there was a disaster of such huge proportions that it just destroyed everything, and the only thing that was left was these giant stones. There's another stone here, too, you can see in the next picture. This is 3,300,000 pounds.
Wow.
3,300,000 pounds, and they were moving these stones around.
These people are just standing here looking at it like we are.
Yep.
Like, what?
Mm-hmm. In a state of destruction, of course. This everything has been destroyed. This is what's left. This is 50 miles north of Damascus, Syria. And there are no records, no nothing. It's just in a state of destruction. Entirely in a state of destruction that we have found. Because it's laying around. Right. You find this kind of stuff all the time. They're finding new stuff. A giant
stuff that's unburied or
gigantic.
whatever.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Or making roads or whatever. Yeah. You find stuff, and you find this unbelievable gigantic stuff, that there's no explanation for. That obviously is too big to cut, too big to move, and there's no such thing as any tools being able to do it. But yet there it is. So it was in fact done. But we just don't know how. And since world history says it only goes back 5,000 years, they say, well, this was done 5,000 years ago.
Yeah.
But we somehow lost the technology, or there was secret technology they didn't want anybody to know, or there were aliens that came and did it. You hear all this kind of nonsense. But that's exactly what it is nonsense.
No records left behind by
No,
the
nothing.
stonemason guy.
No, There's no records by the stonemason guy. Nothing. It just gone.
Yeah.
So this last one we're going to do is so big that it's mind-boggling. I mean, even the last ones were mind-boggling.
Yeah, they're huge.
I mean, 3 million pounds?
Yeah.
Come on, right?
Yeah.
It's starting to get ridiculous.
Yeah.
And this one is Yangshan, China, the Yangshan monolith. Now, what you're looking at here is the base. They were making a monolith that had a base, a body, and a head to it. And what you're looking at is the base. This giant rock that looks like it is just sitting there is actually something that's been carved out. And you can see it's moved 6-8 feet away from the cliff there.
Yeah.
It's been moved over about 6-8 feet. Whoever it was, a long time ago, cut this thing out and moved it because they were building something that was gigantic. Now, this piece weighs 32 million pounds.
Wow.
Roughly 32 million pounds, and they cut it out and they moved it over. And now, in the next picture, you can see this is...
That gives you an idea. Look at that.
This is the same stone right
Yeah.
there. And you can see how big it is.
Yeah.
It's so big, it's unbelievable. And you can see these little pieces of stone underneath that it's resting on.
Uh-huh.
In some way, that's what they do, how they were able to cut it and move it with those stones on it. We don't know anything about it.
Yeah.
Or how or why you would cut something of such massive size. What would even be the purpose? You couldn't
Yeah.
move it or anything. Well, they could, but we can't move it. Now, the next picture, you'll see the body and the head. Now, on the right here is the body that they were going to use and stack on top of that other thing, the base. And on the left there, that is what they were carving out as the head of whatever they're going to make, whether it be a dragon or something like that. Who knows?
Yeah.
But I think there's one more picture that you can kind of see underneath of the body. And yeah, this is underneath the body, and you can see the head there on the left, and you can see how they were carving it.
Yeah.
And we're standing underneath of the body. Now, I guess you wouldn't want to be the guy that cuts out the last piece down here. Right?
Yeah. Okay.
But obviously, they had a way of doing it where that wasn't going to happen. But
Yeah.
we don't know what that is. See, we would cut it out and it'd fall down. But you can see these pathways that are here. This has since been put in by the Chinese for tourism.
Yeah.
But the actual stones are exactly where they were left. There they are right there.
Wow.
The body weighs 17 million pounds. And the head weighs 12 million pounds.
Wow.
So they say officially that the ancient Chinese of 5,000 years ago, is what they say, were making these. And in the process of making them, they discovered, wait a second, these are too big. How are we going to make something this big? And so they decided to stop working on it.
Really?
Now, that's the official explanation of why they stopped working. That's nonsense.
Yeah.
Those people didn't start making it, worked on it for 4 years, and then said, oh, wait a second. Hong Qing decided this is too big to move. Let's forget it now.
Yeah, if you knew you were going to do this in the first place, you would have thought ahead.
Yeah. Yeah, they were doing
Obviously.
it. And my guess is that they were making it when the cataclysmic destruction happened, and it killed everybody.
Yeah.
And they were done, and that's how we see it. And they would have kept making it, and they would have been done with it, but it got destroyed
Right.
somehow by a giant cataclysm that was so unbelievable
Right.
that it destroyed everything and everyone, and the only thing that's left is these giant stones, because it doesn't matter what. Now, I got a picture of something that weighs 14 million pounds, vastly less than those rocks. This
Only
thing right here.
14 million.
14 million pounds.
Just 14.
Yeah, that's right. Way less than those rocks.
And this is something you can ride the elevator to the top.
That's
kind of
right.
Thing. It's so big.
Yep, the Eiffel Tower, unbelievable. Now, we do have something that weighs about the same amount of weight as those giant rocks. And if you got that up, let's bring
do,
that up.
okay.
Let's see it. That is what weighs the same as those rocks. a gigantic cruise liner. So you're talking about unbelievable weight, and I love to show these pictures because it kind of brings to your mind,
Right.
what kind of thing we're dealing with here.
Yeah.
But this is unknown ancient technology, which was way in advance. Not like we have today with computers, but advanced in a way where you could move giant things and carve giant things and put giant things together in a way we have no idea how it even could have been done.
Yeah.
With drills and machinings and tools of various sorts, and we don't have any of that stuff. Now, it may be sometime or another we'll dig up some tools, and I hope that happens, because then we'll be able to see how some of the stuff was done with some of the tools.
Some stuff, yeah.
But as of yet, we don't come up with any tools. We only have the rocks.
Yeah. Big mystery.
So we got a big mystery. But now I got historical documents and ancient documents, biblical stuff.
Yes.
That will show us what and how all this stuff kind of came about.
Okay.
First is historical document. This is a quote from Josephus, which is a first century Jewish historian. And he says that for many angels of God accompanied with women and begot sons that proved unjust and despisers of all that was good on account of the confidence they had in their own strength. For the tradition is that these men did what resembled the acts of those whom the Grecians call giants. He is relating to us Genesis 6 is what he's doing, where the Bible says that angels came down, fallen angels, and took for themselves wives, and the result of those unions were giants. So we have a biblical record of that in Genesis 6. Well, here we have historical record of that very thing with Josephus.
Josephus quote.
This was also believed by our early Christian forefathers, such as Irenaeus, Tertullian, and Origen, also believed that there were giants in the ancient pre-flood times.
Right.
Now, the Book of Enoch, which is not a biblical book, but a historical document, that was also found with the Dead Sea Scrolls, and it's also quoted in the Book of Jude. So it has some weight to it, but it's a historical document, and you want to trust historical documents as historical documents, not as biblical, right?
Right.
But here's what they say there. Book of Enoch, it says, "Wherefore have ye left the high, holy, and eternal heaven, and lain with women," talking about the angels, "and lain with women, and defiled yourselves with the daughters of men, and taken to yourselves wives, and done like the children of the earth, and begotten giants as your sons." Another quote says, "And they became pregnant, and they bore great giants, who consumed all the acquisitions of men. And when men could no longer sustain them, the giants turned against them and devoured mankind." Now you have another piece of information that was also in the Dead Sea Scrolls called the Book of Giants. And I don't have that whole quote here because I didn't want to make this too long.
Yeah.
But this is easily lookable for anybody that wants to track this information down.
Right.
The Book of Giants, which tells the story about how these fallen angels came down to earth, took for themselves wives, and then also changed the genes and the seed of everything. So they changed the seed of man. So you had this half human, half fallen angel seed, which were giants. They changed the seed of the animals, the grass, the trees, everything. They changed everything. The Book of Giants says, for the purpose of miscegenation,
Yeah.
which is a fancy word that means to change the genes of things.
Right.
They wanted to change everything. And they did it in such a way that they were trying to destroy the plan of God. This is why the flood was necessary, I should say, in the first place. Because the situation was so bad that God had to do something about it, so drastic that he actually had to wipe the place off.
Right.
So now we get to the biblical text, and this is what really gets good. Because the Bible, I mean, that's our foundation, right? And so if you can add historical data to it and archaeological data, like as we've seen with these stones, to the biblical account, you really got something.
Yep.
So Genesis 6:1, where it says, "Now it came to pass when men began to multiply on the face of the earth, and daughters were born to them, that the sons of God saw the daughters of men, that they were beautiful, and they took wives for themselves, all of whom they chose. And the Lord said, My spirit shall not strive with man forever, for he is indeed flesh, yet his days shall be 120 years. There were giants on the earth in those days, and also afterward, when the sons of God came into the daughters of men, and they bore children to them. Those were the mighty men who were of old, men of renown. We have all this mythology and history of the Titans that were half God, half men, and giants, and so on and so forth, passing down. Men of renown, right? Then the Lord saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every intent of the thought of his heart was only evil continually. And the Lord was sorry that he made man on the earth, and he was grieved in his heart. So the Lord said, I will destroy man who I have created from the face of the earth, both man and beast, creeping thing, and birds of the air, for I am sorry that I have made them. But Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord. This is the genealogy of Noah. Noah was a just man, perfect in his generations. Now you had a gene pool problem, a seed problem, because you had these half angel, half human giants running around. The Bible says that the Christ would come in the future, and he was 100% man and 100% God. And here you have this seed introduced,
Right.
that is not all man anymore. You see, an attempt to destroy the plan of God is being done here. And it was so bad that God had to do it, and it came down to the last 8 people. But this is a great clue here where it says, this is the genealogy of Noah. Noah was a just man and perfect in his generations.
Yeah, why would you put perfect in his generations?
Right.
If that, what didn't it, apply to that?
Because his seed was clean.
Clean, yeah.
His bloodline.
Yeah.
Bloodline did not have any of that in it.
Yeah.
And he also qualified with the other thing. Noah walked with God.
Right.
He loved God, and his seed was clean. That's what you had to have. He had it. And Noah begot 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And the earth also was corrupt before God. So not just man, remember. We have historical and biblical data that shows that the earth was corrupted before God. Man and the earth. And the earth was filled with violence. So God looked upon the earth. And indeed, it was corrupt. For all flesh had corrupted their way on the earth. So all flesh had been corrupted in some way. Now, Noah on the ark, remember, 2 of each kind came in. Obviously still clean, just like he was still clean.
Right.
And his family was still clean. And these animals that went onto the ark were also clean animals. And God said to Noah, the end of all flesh has come before me, for the earth is filled with violence through them, and behold, I will destroy them with the earth. Now, the Bible says everything is confirmed by 2 or 3 witnesses, and so we also have scripture in the New Testament which confirms what we've just read in the Old Testament, and that is first in Jude 1, verse 6. And it says, and the angels who did not keep their proper domain, but left their own abode, he has reserved in everlasting chains under darkness for the judgment of the great day. You see, angels that came down. Also in 2 Peter 2, verses 4 and 5, it says, for if God did not spare the angels who sinned. What angels is that? The angels that came down, obviously, right?
Genesis 6.
Yep. But cast them down to hell and delivered them into chains of darkness to be reserved for judgment. And this next verse is interesting because it ties it to the very thing we're talking about. And did not spare the ancient world, but saved Noah, one of 8 people, a preacher of righteousness, bringing in the flood on the world of the ungodly. Right? He even ties it to the incident in Genesis 6.
Yeah, wow.
So we've got biblical evidence all over the place talking about this thing that happened in the ancient of times.
Right.
Now, according to biblical calculations, you can calculate this out from the genealogies we have in Genesis. From Adam to the flood, it was 1,656 years. 1,656 years. So you can figure out the average number of children, the average age of the people that lived then, which was quite old. I think the average was 900 years or something like that. And Methuselah was 969. I think Noah was 910. And conservatively, when you average that out, do you know what kind of numbers we're talking about for people that were alive at the time of the flood?
A lot.
Yep. It's between 5 and 7 billion people. I mean 17 billion. 5 and 17 billion people.
Wow. Yeah.
Right now we have 6 billion.
Yeah.
So if you had the flood today, you're talking small potatoes even compared to how it was at the time in the ancient times.
And those are conservative estimates.
Conservative numbers.
Yeah. Wow.
5 and 17 billion.
Wow.
So what I believe we're looking at here is the remnants of an ancient world, pre-flood world that God had to destroy with the flood. And this is how come we don't have any records. This is how come we see ancient technology, because you're dealing with giant people, at least some of them. Not everybody were giants, of course, but a lot of them were. Giants that were led by fallen angels. So we're not talking about cavemen trying to figure out how to do stuff. Yeah. We're talking about giants that were led by fallen angels. This is weird stuff, right?
Yeah.
Exceptionally weird stuff. But we got biblical evidence, historical evidence, archaeological evidence, all that shows that, and that's why we don't have any of these evidences, and that's why your pyramids are in the state of destruction. All these things in Peru in a state of destruction. These things most likely are remnants that survived the flood of Noah, what's known as the flood of Noah, which is so bad that it destroyed everything in the world.
Except these things were so big, like these pyramids.
So big that they actually survived the flood. And that is why we don't have any records of any sort, or any tools, or any people, or anything. All we have left are the giant monoliths that remain. And everything that remains is in a state of destruction and has signs of massive water erosion, like the Sphinx here in this picture.
Yeah. God left just enough.
Indeed.
To find out.
Just enough so we can see what
the evidence of this. Yeah.
And this is what he says in his word, and it's no surprise that we find evidence.
That's right.
For exactly what he says in his word.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's fascinating, it's interesting, and everything aligns up to it perfectly right. The biblical record is the one that is true, not the manufactured historical worldly record that they say goes back 5 or 6,000 years. It's the biblical record that we want to believe. It's the Bible that you go with. It's Jesus Christ that's true.
Right on.
We'll end it there.
Okay.
That's a fantastic thing. In a few weeks, we'll have some more great stuff up here, and it'll be a neat thing.
Yeah, we'd love to have your comments on YouTube here, and thanks for watching, everybody. Have a good one.